So welcome everyone to everyone who's here in person and also everyone joining us, online for this really exciting event. And it's my great honor, pleasure to introduce Distinguished Professor Emeritus of Sociology, uh, Dick Madsen from UCSD. And yeah, so I will first go, cover some of the amazing accomplishments that Dick has been, very much esteemed by, his colleagues and a lot of people in this discipline. And then I will follow that with my own personal connection with Dick, which is quite extensive too. So Dick received his master's and PhD in sociology from Harvard University. And he has truly just been a giant in the discipline of sociology, and especially in terms of the study of the role of religion in society. Here is one um, blurb, that I found that really captures a lot of his accomplishments. He has often been called as one of the modern day founders of the study of Chinese religion. And he recently edited a volume entitled The Sinicization of Chinese Religion from Above and Below, examining the meaning and practice of the ongoing campaign to sinicize religious organizations in China. Dick is the author of 19 books on Chinese culture, U.S. society, and U.S.-China relations, including some landmark studies. Ten Village under Mao and Deng is one really good example. And then also its sequel, Ten Village, Revolution to Globalization. Um, so many of these books have really had a huge impact on in the discipline of sociology, and then also, very, very influential in terms of the West's understanding of especially Asian religions and Buddhism in particular. So I think it's a really, really treat for all of us to have him here today, to talk about some of the things that he has really um, focused on in his research. Um, and his works have explored a variety of vital themes in both Chinese and Taiwanese civil society, exposing a lot of fascinating insights into often understudied and difficult to research groups. Um, and I believe Dick is also still currently the director of the Fudan University and UC Center on Contemporary China. So he often is invited to a lot of universities around the world to give these talks. And they're just so fortunate for all of us that here in San Diego, we have, we have someone like that present in our midst. Now, on a more personal level, Dick and I have also been colleagues. And in fact, for a while, he was the provost of Eleanor Roosevelt College at UCSD, where I spent 20 years teaching. And so Dick has been, I mean, I think it would be a stretch for me to call myself his colleague because he's always been more of a mentor to me. And even when I was starting my career there, Dick, took me, under his wings and really helped me to kind of learn the ropes of the trade. And I cannot ask for a better mentor, than Dick Madsen. And so he has been a really dear friend and just very inspiring mentor. And I am just so glad to have this opportunity to introduce him and also for some of you maybe to have a chance to look at some of the amazing work, the great corpus of scholarly work that he has produced. All right, and so please join me in welcoming Professor Dig Madsen.
Well, thank you very much, Edmund. Um, Edmund, is very honored to have him introduce me. He's our best teacher we had at Eleanor Roosevelt College. And I learned from him, not just he from me. So um, I hope you don't get too bored. I'm a professor, and we professors are boring. And my wife often says that, right? But any case, I'd like to just give some some thoughts and some experiences about modern Buddhism, the modernization of Buddhism. So, you know, any great living tradition is constantly being developed and revised over the centuries, people creatively adapting infidelity, the earlier texts, and so forth. And so that's what's happened in the 20th century. Probably the most important development has been uh, the creation of kind of a Buddhism that's very, very oriented to the world. Uh, One variety of it is called Humanistic Buddhism. Uh, Another is called Engaged Buddhism. But the idea is that to transcend the world, escape the world, you don't have to go just into a monastery, which is still important, but you should be also engaged in the world, the monastics, but lay people. So basically, it's a kind of a Buddhism that expands, if you will, the Sangha, the Buddhist community. So it's not just monasteries, but many, many lay people who are participating actively in trying to, uh, develop the Dharma. So there are one in Chinese a phrase is to ru shi, uh, you have to true shi, you have to ru shi. To leave the world, you have to enter the world. You have to be part of this world with all its messiness and all its problems, and to make the world better in some way. So that's the basic idea. There's a kind called engaged Buddhism, which especially you find in Southeast Asia and South Asia, Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, also Sri Lanka, India. And that particular uh, mode tends to be more socially active, uh, people working to transform social political structures, the structures that oppress people and cause poverty and so forth and so on, uh, and are activists in that way. So that's not the kind I'm going to talk about today, but it's socially engaged Buddhism has also made interesting contributions. I know someone, my friend who's a lawyer in Hong Kong, works with this man named Lenin, and he's a socially engaged Buddhist from India. Lenin is Indian, but he's a Dalit, member of the lowest caste in India, the untouchables. And he's part of this movement that's been working to um, end discrimination and so forth among uh, these low caste Indians. Now, Lenin comes from a family of hardcore communists. He has a brother named Stalin. And so this is hardcore. Uh, but then, communism is the god that failed, and Lenin is converted to become a Buddhist now. and but he's an engaged Buddhist. Okay, so that's a certain kind of engaged Buddhism. The kind you see developed in Taiwan, especially in the last couple of generations, is also it's called humanistic Buddhism or Buddhism in the human realm, which is more focused on personal development, personal conversion. The idea is that people can be developed to be have to be truly compassionate, and truly have, especially the Bodhisattva ethic, because Mahayana Buddhism, like you see in Taiwan, is based very much, very strong on the ethic of the Bodhisattva. Uh, you will have a better society, and if people practice compassion and kindness and goodness and so forth, that'll create society. Not exactly like Lenin would want to, be politically active to do it. So that's the kind of the ethos of Buddhism in Taiwan. Uh, One thing that all these, both the uh, engaged and the Buddhism in the world, humanistic Buddhists have, is that they emphasize really practice. So it's not just a matter of knowing a great number of theories and all that kind of thing. It's a matter of putting compassion into practice and working on it and developing all these practices. So that's the main thing. Okay. So you don't have to be like a, expert theologian or expert sutras and stuff to be a good Buddhist. The main important thing is to practice compassion and so forth. So, but there are intellectual foundations, and that was last month, the talk. I talked about Taishu. He was a Buddhist reformer in China in the first half of the 20th century. And he was determined to kind of purify Chinese Buddhism, which had come under hard times, and make it really serve people of China. And this involved study, organization, and all that. And the Buddhists in Taiwan are heirs of Taishu. His whole project was stymied by war and revolution, and he died in 1947. But his main disciples, a person named Yin Shun, who came to Taiwan after 1949, who was a great thinker, philosopher, and so forth. And Yin Shun carried a lot of all the intellectual foundations of this into Taiwan. So in any case, I won't go. That's enough for that kind of history. But let's see if I can. So now I'll just talk a little bit about myself and how I got into this, okay, and then talk about practical experiences, okay. So I started out, and with my wife Judy and I, we were both going to be missionaries, Catholic missionaries, Marino. And so I went to Taiwan in 1968, and she went in, I think, 1970. And any case, we were there, and we were trying to, extend Christianity, Catholicism. And, the Catholics and the Protestants, they made some important contribution to Taiwan, built hospitals and universities and many wonderful things. And actually, Christianity was favored by the government in Taiwan, authoritarian government under Chiang Kai-shek, who was a Christian himself, and also supported by this lobby, the China lobby in America, many of the main members of which were former Protestant missionaries. So there was that. But then Christianity sort of never took off, but it had a substantial presence. I went and studied Chinese at a language school that was connected with Furen University, which was the Catholic university in Taipei. But the government at that time didn't didn't favor religion at all. They allowed the Christians because they needed support from the USA and so forth and so on for human rights and for the Christian support. But they didn't support Buddhism or any other religion in Taiwan. So the Buddhists were never allowed to have universities, never allowed to build hospitals or other kind of social services. They wanted to keep it totally under control. It was only the Christians that could do that. So so then I left, Taiwan, the missionary project in Taiwan, and ended up getting my MA, and I got a PhD at Harvard, like Edmund said, and then I became a professor studying this stuff. And then partly by accident, I returned to Taiwan in around late 1970s, and I was only amazed. We were supposed to I was with a group trying to give advice to people in China, actually, about how to rebuild, civil society and all this kind of thing. And then we went to Taiwan too to give them advice. And then we met with all these people, these Buddhist people especially, and we should have gotten advice from them, not from them. We had nothing to teach them. What they were doing was amazing, and creating all sorts of new, wonderful kind of things in Taiwan. Also, a great renaissance of religion, which really blossomed after Taiwan began a transition to democracy, especially a renaissance among the middle classes, especially of Buddhism, especially of this humanistic Buddhism. So it's really fascinating. And also from my own kind of scholarly research, it's fascinating because around the world, when you see big religious movements propping up in countries that are transitioning to democracy, often you have serious trouble, okay? In the Middle East and so forth, you get fanaticism, you get really, but the kind of development in Taiwan was really something that kind of caused people to be socially responsible, compassionate, and so forth, which helped smooth over some of the rough edges of this transition. And so it was really a positive kind of thing. It was a wonderful thing. So it's some of the kind of things we had wanted to do as missionaries now is being done in a new way, in a wonderful way. And so I thought it'd be good to kind of study this. So my wife, Judy, and I, we went and we did spent some time in 1999 and later studying the major humanistic religious groups in Taiwan. So here's just some examples. The first, of course, is Foguanshan Buddha's Light Mountain, which the Shifang Temple, of course, is part of Foguanshan. And the founder there, Xingyun, which means moving cloud, his Chinese name means, he he came to Taiwan in 1949. He had been ordained a monk earlier in China, and still as a young monk, and in a monastery that was heavily influenced by Tai Xu and those reforms. Okay, so he came to Taiwan. He comes to Taiwan, and he's not super accepted by the establishment. He was under tight control of the government, and he works in the eastern part of Taiwan, Yilan, a pretty remote area, and he has a small temple and a small community. But one thing about him was he's an incredibly good communicator. He's really, really good. He pioneered all sorts of using slides and multimedia and so forth. And later on, he became a master communicator. You have all the things he's written. You get a copy of his written works right there. And, he gave talks on radio, on TV, in person. Sometimes in person, he would give these talks that filled major sports stadiums, Hong Kong, Singapore, tens of thousands of people. And he became a total phenomenon as a communicator of Buddha's Dharma. So in 1967, the year before I came to Taiwan, he had started with some support building a temple in the southern part of Taiwan in Kaohsiung. It's called Buddha's Light Mountain. And that's later, it developed. And here it is. This is the main hall. And it's a very extensive, they keep building more and more kind of parts of it. But this is the main hall. This is the welcoming Buddha, which is at the front of it to kind of welcome you in. And they bring all sorts of people together in Taiwan. they also have universities. They have separate temples and so forth all throughout the island. Uh, and here we attended, and this is Judy and I, this ceremony to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. And that was 1999. And you see here, there were 1,000 people at this ceremony, mostly Chinese from Taiwan. Uh, the ones with the black robes are people who are taking the vows for the 5 precepts, which I'll talk about later a little bit. And the ones in the back are just taking refuge in the Buddha Dharma. So we were in the back, okay, we had the ones wearing regular clothes. Uh, and but this shows you that this is one event in Taiwan, 1,000 people coming to this, and this would be repeated, multiple times a year. Uh, and and this is a meeting we had with a group meeting with Master Xing Yun. You see my wife Judy's there, and I'm there on the edge, and and we got to know him pretty well, and we got to know the monastery pretty well. And then one important thing about Fo Guangshan is they uh, have gone global. So in 1988, Xing Yun came to Los Angeles and began building this Xilai temple in Hacienda Heights. It's in LA. And this temple here, the Shifang, is the kind of offshoot of it, or kind of connected to it. And you notice the temple looks pretty much like the main temple in Taiwan. It's just like a copy of it. So it kind of reproduces all this. But beyond that, they've gone further, globalization. So they have around the world about 200 temples and practice centers in every continent in the world except for Antarctica. And they also developed in 1991, I believe, the Buddhist Light International Association, which is kind of like an NGO, which enables people, lay followers, to take part in all sorts of philanthropic activities, helping people in all different ways, etc. And so you have this development in Taiwan that's attracted, enormous attention in Taiwan, but also has spread the light of Buddha, as they like to say, around the world. So that was one that we got to know and study and live with. And then another group in Taiwan is Tzu. Here's in the middle, that's Dharma Master Zheng Yan. And she was born in 1937. She was from Taiwan herself, middle part of Taiwan. In 1960, her father died very suddenly, and she had like a spiritual crisis when that happened. And so she linked up with a Buddhist nun who had been trained actually in Japan, and they went off into the mountains of Taiwan and tried to find a spiritual path. And then eventually in 1963, she before this, she was determined to become a monastic. She actually shaved her head and said she taking vows by herself, but she didn't have a community. And then she came to Taipei, and Master Xin Yung was giving a talk, and she met him, and she asked him to ordain her, be a nun, and he did. And then she went and she founded this did this monastery in Hualien in the eastern part of Taiwan. Uh, this is it here. It's called the Abode of Still Thoughts. And it's smaller than a Buddhist-like mountain. It has right now about 200 nuns live there. But the Buddhist-like mountain has at least 1,500 monastics in Buddhist-like mountain itself. Then around, they have more around the world. But this is this group of nuns basically support themselves by doing handicrafts and selling this kind of food paste and stuff like that. But then next to it is this more impressive building, huge building. And this is the foundation, because what happened was in the late 1960s, this Master Chung Yan, to enable some, lay people to kind of develop good karma practice, she encouraged basically local housewives to donate a couple of cents actually every month in this kind of little banks. They had this bamboo bank. And then that grew into this foundation, which people were contributing money to help people poor and sick and victims of disaster and so forth throughout Taiwan. And that's grown and grown. And they have hospitals and universities and so forth and so on. And they have at least 4 million sort of members who are people who pledge a certain amount of money every month. But then there are different levels of that. And then there's a level called the commissioners, which are about 80,000. And the woman there in a navy blue dress, she'd be a commissioner. And they devote an enormous amount of their time and energy to this foundation, doing all sorts of work. So they're around the world. They have 600 centers of various kinds around the world in all continents. And wherever there's a disaster, they're there providing help of all kinds, here in California too. But they've been in Rwanda and Kosovo and now in the Middle East and wherever there's a disaster, which we get plenty of these days, they're there helping people. And also they have hospitals, major hospitals and health clinics and so forth and so on. They have one in LA, in Alhambra, for example, a free clinic. And they also global, like I said, 600 around the world. This is their California headquarters. What that building is, actually, that's in Los Angeles, in San Dimas, which is north of LA. And that actually was the Catholic seminary for the Diocese of Los Angeles. But because there weren't enough people want to be priests, but also because the diocese had to pay off a lot of money because they had some sexual abuse scandals and so forth, they had to sell it. So they sold it to the Buddhists. Okay. So this is a sign of the times. And this is Tzu major center in California. And also it's kind of a center for the West Coast. Okay. So anyway, so that's another group, okay? And then there's Dharma Drum Mountain, and that's Master Shengyan. And Shengyan was also, he came, born in 1931, he came to Taiwan after 1949, when people, mainland China government collapsed. And he was a monk before, but then he joined the army actually in Taiwan. Then in 1959, he had this kind of very profound enlightenment experience, spiritual experience. And he determined to go back and become a monk again. And he went up and he lived in a hut by himself in the mountains for 3 years, praying, meditating, studying Buddhism. And then he came out and he became he went to Japan, got a PhD in Buddhist studies in Japan. Of all these great leaders in Taiwan, he's the one with the most higher education. And then in Taiwan, there wasn't a sort of a temple for him in 1970 when he finished that. And so he went to New York and he uh, built a temple, created a temple in New York, in Queens. And then later on, a big retreat center in upstate New York. And in New York, he was helped a lot by Bob Thurman, Robert Thurman, who was a professor of Buddhist studies at Columbia University, probably the foremost scholar of Buddhism in America at the time. And so Thurman helped him make his contacts and so forth and get started with this temple in Queens, and then later on this other thing. Robert Thurman, his daughter's Uma Thurman, who's an actress, and she's helped to kind of bring Buddhist influence into Hollywood, I think. Okay. Uh, so uh, so then he went back to Taiwan in his temple in Taipei in 1979 when the abbot there died, and then he developed this idea of building a big monastery complex in a place called Dharma Drums, north of Taipei, and there it is, and it's become also influential in lots of very important ways. They have 60, also expanded globally. They have 60 centers around the world. And this is their retreat center in New York. And Dharma Drum, its kind of thing they focus on is Chan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, Japanese, and Zen meditation, and they have these people they cultivate as Dharma heirs around the world who have these practice centers and who do this. So those are the three groups we studied and had a great influence on us. Maybe not so much on them, but on us. And so I want to just say a few things about different paths these communities have taken. So they're each different, have different styles and different paths to the Dharma, and somewhat different kind of membership clientele. Although there's overlaps, some people belong to both or others. So Buddha's Light Mountain is especially wonderful in this wide range of Buddhist practices, rituals of all kinds, something for everything. Xing Yun said it was like a supermarket, something for everything we have, and all different kinds. So this is inside the main hall of the temple, and you see it's very beautiful. All these people are people probably taken their bodhisattva vows, and they have the robes. So we were there without robes, okay, in fact. And there are a number of monastics in there too. And in the morning, the chanting it reverberates to the whole thing. It's extremely powerful, extremely beautiful. And you see all these these electric kind of candles and so forth, which are equivalent would be in the West, those votive lights, honoring, bring good karma to deceased relatives and so forth. And now Tzu its kind of specialty has been helping people around the world. So this was in Taiwan. Judy and I, we took part in, they had this terrible earthquake in 1999. And Tzu was a major force in helping rebuild. So we helped them, and she was good at hammering and nailing and all that good stuff, and rebuild these houses and so forth, and provide food for people afflicted and so forth. And in Taiwan, it became a political issue actually. In surveys after this earthquake, which was really a devastating thing, 2,500 people killed and billions and billions of dollars of damage. Basically, the government came off badly. like 70% of the people said the government really messed up and did a terrible job. 95% said that the Buddhists did a good job. And the only 5% that complained was they served vegetarian food. But aside from that, it was terrific. Okay. And so they showed up, the government. It wasn't just Tzu that did this. Buddhist Light Mountain, Fogwan Shan contributed, Fog Shan did too. Okay. And the Buddhist Light International Association around the world has its philanthropy that does all this kind of thing too. But uh, Tzu is more, it's kind of a specialty. And so they mobilize all these different people who find um, their practice in extending Buddhist compassion by helping people in need through all these different things. And then Dharma Drum, all I have is they really focus on Chan meditation. They don't have a good picture of Chan meditation. You can't picture it, you know. Sheng Yan says it's the gateless gate, but it provides a really kind of existential comfort for people and who undertake this practice. And Buddha's Light Mountain has a wonderful Zen hall too, Chan Hall, and I think in Shilai Temple, all the major big places all have that, and they have Chan meditation too. But Dharma Drum Mountain, it's kind of renowned for its specialty. Okay, so the one thing to talk about now is how all this leads to this creative adaptation to modern life, the modern world. Enter the world. What kind of world do you enter? Okay. So the Buddhists say, you know, classically there are four poisons. Four poisons or four, it's like in the Christian, four cardinal sins, or they have four poisons. Okay. Four poisons are greed, anger, hatred, and delusion. And so those are the four poisons. And, you know, now in this world, we have capitalist greed, we have militarized anger, we have ethnic and religious hatred, and we have technological delusion, all globalized. And to an extent that goes beyond anything that the historical Buddha would have ever seen. So that's the world we live in now. So how to adapt to that, how to deal with that, how to help make this land a good land. So the Buddhist ethic, the core of it are these five precepts, you know. So the five precepts are sort of equivalent in the Christians would be the 10 Commandments. Okay, so we have 10, they have five, they cover most of the same ground. Okay, the first is no killing, and then it's supposed to be no killing of any sentient being. The second is no stealing or cheating. The third is no unorthodox sex, which traditionally has been interpreted as no sex outside of monogamous marriage. And then the fourth is no lying, and then the fifth is no consuming of intoxicating beverages, alcohol, or drugs, and so forth. So those are the precepts, but they're different from the 10 Commandments in a way. Okay, the commandments are posed as kind of laws. You break them or not. The precepts are basically a kind of a path to develop yourself, to develop a certain character and on the path to proper cultivation. So, for example, Christian precept, Christian commandment is, thou shalt not kill. Okay. So I myself, I never killed anybody. Okay. And that's fine. So I've obeyed the commandment. However, I never had the opportunity to kill anybody. Okay. So the Buddhist, the point of the precept would be, you so develop yourself, you would never want to kill anybody. You would never be able to, so forth. You develop a person, and it's a constant kind of process. And of course, it involves also non-killing of other sentient beings too, not just people. Uh, so these are paths to kind of develop a certain kind of perfection, not just like a commandment. You do it or not, and check off, whether you're committed to sin or not. So they're paths to cultivating virtue. And you do that in a way that's adapted to circumstances. They call it skillful means, which means actually working in a very fluid, flexible way to adapt to all kinds of situations. So, for instance, about killing, about vegetarianism, after we took our, you know, refuge in the Buddha at that ceremony, the head abbot gave a talk to all of us that said about vegetarianism. Said, you shouldn't, we want to be vegetarian, but don't be obsessed by it. Says, the Tibetans aren't vegetarian. Don't, adapt. And for instance, if your spouse wants to eat meat, cook them meat dinners, okay? If you, and don't worry about these things, okay? But you should try to develop yourself a kind of mentality and then influence others by your generosity and love and so forth, and they will follow you and move them along that path. So a lot of the adaptation now comes through following these kind of precepts, but using skillful means, adopting to these new changed circumstances. So I could just close with some writings mostly from Master Xingyun. But the problem people have, part of the context was in Taiwan, but it also is relevant here too. Okay, but in Taiwan, people would write in these kind of accounts of how what they're hoping to get from Buddhism, right? And they would say things like, I grew up in a small village, in Taiwan, a rural village. I went off and got a university degree. Then I went off in America. I got a PhD. I left my parents behind. They're in this village, and you're supposed to show filial piety to them. Love, I don't know how to do that anymore. I live in a whole different world. I live far away. What does it mean to be a filial child of these parents now, and with this new kind of mobility and all that? And the Buddhist will say, well, you need to still give love to your parents. You can maybe also rely on things like Buddhist charities and so forth, be in touch with them, besides contacting them regularly and so forth and so on. And they'll be happy and proud of your success and all that, but anyway, so basically maintaining this kind of love and charity and compassion toward them, even when your circumstances change in a way that's going to be very challenging. Also, you have husbands and wives writing in and say, husband says, I follow the old idea that, I'm supposed to tell my wife what to do and, be authority. And she doesn't put up with it. And she henpecks me and it's miserable. And so the Buddhists say, well, now you have to realize with your love and compassion, says there's dignity and our autonomy and so forth. You have to develop this relationship in a new way that fits this modern condition and so forth and so on. So it's a matter of kind of giving kind of a teaching and a cultivation that can adapt to this new situation where old rules and old things change. So this leads to things like how to think about family life. So let me just talk about how Master Xingyuan has talked about this. So I got a whole bunch of his writings that actually Eddie here translated, right? You translated those, and so he lent them to me. So here's some of Xingyuan's own words. So the third Buddhist precept is, of course, it forbids unorthodox sex and outside of any monogamous marriage and heterosexual and so forth. But these are paths to perfection. And the approach of Buddhist leaders today is not to condemn them, but to encourage people to better themselves through cultivation under guidance from the Buddhist community. In Chinese culture, marriage and family are very highly valued. They can produce almost as much good karma as the monastic vocation. Now, homosexual acts would fall into the category of unorthodox sex based on the Mahayana tradition. However, contemporary humanistic Buddhist leaders are much more focused on the ethic of compassion than on strict prescriptions. And some at least acknowledge prescriptions against homosexuality is based on outdated cultural understandings rather than original Buddhist scriptures. So Xingyun writes, marriage is an institution that reflects the values of the society that supports it. If the people of the society no longer believe it's important to be married, then there's no reason why they cannot change the institution of marriage. Marriage is a custom. Customs can always be changed. We can find the same core point in this question as we have in others. The ultimate truth of the matter is that individuals can and should decide for themselves what is right. As long as they're not violating others or breaking the laws of the society in which they are living, then they're free to do what they believe is right. It's not for me or anyone else to tell them that they must get married if they want to live together. That is their choice and their choice alone. The same analysis can be applied to homosexuality. People often ask me what I think about homosexuality. They wonder, is it right? Is it wrong? The answer is, it is neither right or wrong. It's just something that people do. And people are not harming each other. Their private lives are their own business. And so we should be tolerant of them and not reject them. However, it will still take some time for the world to fully accept homosexuality. All of us must learn to tolerate the behavior of others, just as we hope to expand our minds to include all the universe. So we would seek to expand our own minds to include all the many forms of human behavior. So, tolerance is a form of generosity, it's a form of wisdom. There's nothing anywhere in the Dharma that should lead anyone to become intolerant. Our goal as Buddhists is to accept all kinds of people and all kinds of people to discover the wisdom of the teachings of Shakyamuni. He goes on to talk about the family ethic, how important it is. And the idea is not to leave the family, but to extend the family. You're acknowledging the family to the whole world. Treat the whole world as a big family, world everywhere, everyone. Instead of love and compassion and responsibility that we have to our own natal families. And you should be make sacrifices to see their spouses, to see their children, succeed and to help their partner succeed. Medical professionals work around the clock to save lives, alleviate suffering. Religious leaders lead a life of simplicity, so to spread the truth and liberate all sentient beings, and so forth. So everybody has a role to play. They should all try to play their role as best they can, but play it always with generosity and care and love. In the modern world, this complicates things because the world is specialized and so forth. So, for example, to become a physician nowadays, you have this in Sinchi too, in their hospital. They say, of course, we practice scientific medicine. We do research. Often you have to practice, do research on animals. You have to kill the animal. So how does this fit with, non-killing of anything? And the master says, well, if you're doing it for the good of all people and you are treating animals humanely as possible, it's okay. And this is what you do to be a good professional, doctor in the modern world. So this is also kind of taking the things like the precepts and skillful means, looking at the complicated circumstances of real people and so forth, and applying them. And maybe then the final thing that they all talk about is the need to protect the earth, the degeneration of the planet. And they're all very concerned about the fact that, as they say, there's Mother Nature in every being, every part, and that we need to protect the earth, the environment, and so forth. And so all of them do amazing things in kind of environmental protection, whether it's recycling, whether it's just protecting the environment in all sorts of different ways. And they actually make a major effort in Asia, in these developing countries. It's not so easy sometimes to live in an environmentally sensitive way. And they go further with this. Maybe I'll just end with something that Shengyan said about ecology. In the Buddhist analysis, the major ecological problem of our time is not caused by population growth or by technology in itself, but by the growth of insatiable desires provided by modern consumerism. Shengyan says the wasteful consumption of natural resources and destruction of ecology are called by humankind's psychological craving for convenience and wealth. If we can practice the Buddhist teaching of leading a contented life with few desires and being satisfied and therefore always happy, and if we're willing to use our intelligence to deal with problems and engage diligently in productive work, then without having to contend with one another or fight with nature, we can lead very happy lives. The environmental tasks of general people are mostly restricted to the material aspects. The environmental tasks we have to go deeper from the material level to the spiritual level, society and thinking. Environmental protection must be combined with our respective religious beliefs and philosophical thinking into an earnest mission so that environmentalism will not become mere slogans. So strictly speaking, the purification of humankind's mind is free from evil intentions and is not polluted by us. However, for ordinary people, it is advisable to set out by cultivating the habit of protecting the material environment and then go deeper step by step to at last they can cultivate environmentalism in the spiritual realm. So once again, it's following a precept and developing your character and so forth and going deeper into it. And this kind of experience of compassion and care for all things is, he thinks, the secret for helping make this world a pure land. By dealing with some of the environmental collapse, which is probably the apex problem of our time. So just cultivate your compassion and your practice, and the world will be better. That's I suppose the major message. Okay. Thank you. Love.
Okay, so now we have a few minutes to open up the questions. Okay, so I think if anyone wants to ask a question, we need to, in order to involve and make sure that the people online can hear. If you don't mind coming here and asking the question, so you can be on the camera. The hot seat, as they put it. So, how about questions online? Denny? Yeah, it's unmuted.
It's unmuted now? Well, thank you so much for your inspiring and edifying talk. It was really moving, I thought. I just have an observation. I was thinking while you were giving your talk about communism. And in a sense, we have communism to thank for the spread of Buddhism in America. Because I was thinking about Taiwan. Taiwan would not have existed if Chiang Kai-shek had not lost the Civil War against Mao. And so the causes and conditions were established in Taiwan to give rise to Foguan Shan, and they went global, and now we're here. The other two things I was thinking of is Vietnam, the Vietnam War, and um, uh, the spread of um Thai
Thich Nhat Hanh.
Thich Nhat Hanh, thank you, because he aligned himself with Martin Luther King and became very popular for that and brought Buddhism into America that way. Um, and that, I'm interested in your thoughts or comments. I also, by the way, the uh, the Dalai Lama, you know, when China invaded Tibet, the Dalai Lama became a victim, went to India, and again, popularization of Buddhism. So anyway, I'm kind of interested in your thoughts about that.
Well, I think the causes and conditions, they evolve in ways we can't predict. I suppose that's also part of Buddhist tradition, understanding. We take the world as it comes, not as we would want it to be, right? And sometimes the conditions are such that opportunities arise for very creative, uh, forward-looking ways to resolve global problems. So actually, I think coming from Taiwan, one fascinating thing I think is that you have a kind of development of kind of a universalistic kind of ethic, kind of local Buddhism, which is now going global. And all these groups I talked about have done that. And that is really quite amazing in a way. And I think, the great kind of philosopher, historian Karl Jaspers, he talked about axial age 2,500 years ago when in India with Buddhism, in ancient Judaism, in Greece with the Greek philosophers, people developed these global understandings to begin. It was the first time in human cultural history that this happened. And this always happened in each case in a time with times that are unsettled. So basically, times when tradition was coming apart and when people were looking for new ways and need to kind of go beyond. Uh, India, at the time of the Buddha, similar thing. In ancient Judaism, they had been, dominated and by the Assyrians and so forth, and the thing all coming apart. But now there was a need to kind of take that tradition and expand it. Ancient Greece had its own struggles with instability. So it's out of that kind of crucible that you get new kind of visions. And so maybe in this world now we're at this stage, and where it comes from is maybe not where we think. I think America, my colleague Dewey Ming, who's a philosopher and so forth from Harvard, he talked about uh, the living tree of Chinese culture. He said, the great growth in a tree comes from the bark, from the periphery of the tree. Inside is dead wood. And therefore, you probably can't find great creativity coming out of the capitals of the world, like Washington, D.C., for example, and so forth. You'll find it be on the periphery, just like Taiwan, places more on the edge where people can innovate and so forth and develop these grander kind of thoughts. So maybe that's where we're going to see these kind of things come. And then they spread their seeds, around the world. So
The moderator's muted.
Yeah, unfortunately, can we take any more questions or? Yeah.
You can ask and see.
Yeah, it's 8:30 now, but if someone feels strongly compelled to ask a question, maybe we can take another question or two. Is that okay, Venerable? Yeah. Is there anyone in our online audience that would like to Zoom audience that would like to ask a question?
No.
Hi, I would like to ask a
there is one.
question.
Could you, Yuchao, could you unmute yourself? We can't hear.
Oh, hold on a second. Is that better? Can you hear me?
We can hear you online.
Okay.
Let me see.
Hi.
Yeah, Yuchao, unfortunately, I cannot hear what you're saying from here.
Oh, my audio is on. I'm on full.
Venerable.
She can't hear me? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I will type the question, okay, in the chat.
Actually, now, go ahead, Yuchao.
Maybe, I think it's because I have two on. I'm sorry, maybe I have two Zoom on.
Yuchao, whatever setting you had on was working, so go ahead.
I think she killed the session she was talking through.
Oh, oh, oh. God. Yeah, I think she already. Yeah. It's okay. We'll just. She already left.
She
I
left?
think she accidentally
Oh,
ended the
okay.
meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone here that would like to ask a question?
If not, we just thank
Is it okay if I ask a question? So thank you, Denny, for your question, and then also Dick for your response. So it made me think about, so if we consider, Denny used communism as a source of adversity, a historical phenomenon that actually inspired creative responses to that. And so I would like to take that same approach and think in asking Professor Madsen, Dick, what do you think about the advent of AI, this very rapid change that AI is bringing, to the world, and you especially of the four poisons, one of them you mentioned as delusion, and you specified technological delusion, and so I wonder, what your thoughts are on is the advent of AI something just as Denny talked about communism as this phenomenon, is it perhaps another phenomenon that would somehow inspire a humanistic response to this challenge, or really threaten, what humanism and what being human actually means?
Okay, I believe it, and I think actually the Buddhist leaders in Taiwan are talking about this too. I think, look, I think that AI, as a kind of technology, offers some real promise to, help make lives more convenient and all that kind of thing. But I think there's a problem, of course, that it can end up dominating people and indeed dehumanizing people. And that's true. Actually, I was just reading the Pope, the Catholic Pope Leo's new letter on AI. Actually, it's very beautiful, magnificent human, it's called. And it's actually very, very well informed and it's beautiful. So he says basically it's a tool, but it's a tool that can dehumanize. And you have to, we have to avoid that by different ways, by regulation of how it's used and so forth. And anyway, I think the one thing that all these technologies require is you can't solve the problems that they raise by just more technology. I mean, the problems have to be solved by kind of a deeper understanding of what humans are and what they need and so forth. Okay, and AI is with them, and I think Buddhists would understand that, right? And you know, the Pope has a beautiful thing he says is, look, AI, you know, it really it can process information very, very well, some kinds. But you know, it can't really think like people, and it can't forgive. It can't. It can't suffer. It can't go through all the disappointments that we have, and it doesn't have consciousness in that way. And that's what humans are. And if you try to replace, you know, our condition with AI, that's a delusion, right? So the first reason, the first, you know, jewel in Buddhist is our life is there's suffering, dukkha, right? Our life is imperfect. Get used to it, you know. But there's a way to overcome it, or you know, first of all, is to cut down the desires that help people grasp to the ego and so forth and so on, and follow the path, Dharma, the Buddha. So those are Buddhist teachings. I think they're still relevant. Okay, and so don't try to avoid suffering just with technology. Technology will probably bring us some, but don't hide from the fact that we're human, and you know, the Pope's encyclical says that there's something magnificent in that, as messed up as we are, and you know, and live that, right? But by dealing with your desires, your desire to overreach, your ego, and all that, and Buddhist wisdom basically helps tell us that. And the main thing is you know, Xingyun talks about we're made for community. You know, we are interdependent, and you can't. He gives talk. He used to give talks like at university commencements. You know, man, I do. You didn't do this on your own. You know, you had your family, you had your teachers, you had this and that. They all are all part of you. And if you deny that, if you just think it's all you, it's a path to a really terrible disappointment. Okay, and not just for yourself, but in fact for the rest of the world. And so you have to understand that interconnection that we all have. So, and that's Buddhist wisdom. You can find aspects of it in other world religions too. In fact, I think the way in which the religions get together is not so much by discussing, you know, theological ideas, but by practices together, by doing things together, you know. So Buddhist compassion is not exactly the same thing as Christian charity or Muslim brotherhood, but they overlap. And it's in that overlapping space, I think, that we could come together and begin to deal with, you know, the common problems we have as humans. So
Okay, so on that very hopeful note, I think this is a good moment to end this wonderful talk. And so please join me in thanking Professor Dick Madsen again.
Next BIF will be October. Stay tuned.
Our next TBIF event will be in October. Do we have a date?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
The last
Okay, to be determined. Thank you, everyone. All right.
thank you very much.